Okay, everybody, welcome back to Deeper Dive, or welcome to Deeper Dive this week. If you are a Deeper Dive junkie, and I'm starting to find out, James, that there's some junkies out there, people that take this really seriously, asking for T-shirts and hats, and we'll deal with that later. But if you're one of those people, this is your week, because earlier today we filmed an intermediary, culturally relevant Deeper Dive with you, Pastor Chris, and me. And that'll be Tuesday and Thursday. And then this is normally airing on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So every day this week, you will get your fill of Deeper Dive.
And we synthesize the A team
Look
and the
how
B
huge
team.
your hand is.
And oh yeah,
Wow.
we synthesized the A team and the B team, and we got them both together, and we got along.
Yeah, I got it. It was I was really nervous about it at first, but once I realized that you guys were brothers and sisters in Christ with me, and I wasn't having to compete with the B team, I felt better. Actually, I honestly, I left there today. I mean, this is an aside, but I left there today feeling hopeful and honestly just believing in the future, because I know we're not alone, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that there are people scattered throughout Christendom who are taking this very seriously and taking discipleship and the cause of Christ and how to respond to this culture and to what's going on in the world seriously. And honestly, my heart was full leaving. So my prayer is that anybody who happens across that would feel the same way, and it's probably going to sting a little bit to some folks. And I think it's okay, when they don't hear what they're expecting to hear per se, but, and I think it's the same way with their message today, right? When this is the dreaded message. I've always, all the pastors I've known over the years, nobody likes talking about money unless you are in a church of very rich people who can afford to just, and then it's no big deal. But no pastor likes to talk about finances. And it seems to me, and this is one thing that you didn't do, which I appreciate. So I'll let you speak to this, because I feel like you didn't take the easy way out, which is to bury it in the time, talents, and treasures. Most people, they will say, hey, I'm not just talking about giving money now. We're going to talk about giving your time and stuff, but money's important too, but it's not the only thing. I mean, you basically spent the time unpacking, and you did talk about time a little bit and things like that, but that's mostly saying, listen, where your wallet is, that's where your heart is. So what caused you, as you were sort of, first off, how does this fit into a belonger? How does this fit into an emerged lifestyle? And then what caused you to just throw caution to the wind and go straight at it?
All right. So at some point in the journey, we're going to do a series on balance. And basically, this is the first message on that series.
Okay.
Because I believe that as belongers, one of the key words in our lifestyle and our living is balance. Emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally. And so we'll talk about balance. So I wanted to get those 3 laws of balance out there, because we'll come back to those.
Right.
And I was thinking, if we were going to do this kind of series that talked about these 5 areas of life, that could be a good tipping point. I think that between CrossFit and Revelations, Revelations, that's really funny. I haven't done that in like 20 years.
Yeah,
that in Revelation,
it slips out every so
often. We will do a series on balance. So this was the first message on balance. Why does it lend itself to this Emerge New Year series? Because I believe that, as I said today, for us, especially for us, I made the statement today. I know God, the Lord Jesus Christ was talking to an agricultural culture in the East, but I felt like he could have yelled from Galilee all the way to 2021 USA America. I'm going to say USA America for you today instead of US America. So, he could have yelled to us and said, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And so I believe that if we're going to have an Emerge New Year of hope, that area of giving is really an important part of this whole lifestyle, this whole Emerge New Year lifestyle. So that's how it works with that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, is it fair to say that I mean, what you're saying is, if you want things to be different, and if you want to have a different year than we had last year, then there's nothing in your life that you can exclude from examination. Is that sort of what you're saying?
And so you know, if we look at the whole big emerged picture, in order for us to for things to be different, God has got, and I talked about this a little bit in the sermon today, there can be no quadrants of your life that are left, that are hidden or left so that God can't inspect them. You know, we have that one room in the house where we throw all the junk and we close the door and lock it, because the whole rest of the house we can clean up, but that one room we don't want God to check out. Well, for a lot of us, that one room is our finances.
Right.
That one room is our finances, which equals our treasure, our money, our stocks, our whatever.
That's a good picture.
And if that's where our heart is, we had better allow God in that room, because that room represents who we really are. Because for us in USA America, I believe money is the number one competitor for our allegiance with God.
Well, apparently in Jesus' day, he felt the same way, because he, and again, money was equitable to power, which was equivalent to life of the day. So if you were wealthy, you were powerful, and thus you were fully alive. I mean, that's just, you had the best chance of making it longer. And again, every day was a struggle. And I find that interesting. But you said some cool things today. Basically, it's like, if you don't have that much, then you're not, it's like, it's not as big a struggle to give up things, right? Because you're used to living subsistence wise, or you're not just hoarding things. Like, you're okay with sharing things because you're not used to having that much. And I thought that was that's smart. I mean, that's true, right? I mean, and I think God knows that. He's like, if you're clutching all of these things in your arms, there's no space for anything good. Right? There's no space for me. And I don't know. Is that sort of what you're saying?
There's that metaphor that my youth pastor would always tell me when I would go down to the altar. And it was the greatest metaphor in the world. She would say, James, turn your hands over. Open your hands, unclutch your fists, let go of stuff, and turn your hands over. Reba Bowen, if you're listening. She would tell me to turn my hands over. And it's this idea that the stuff that I hold dear to, hold dear to nothing but God. You know, if you're going to hold dear to something, hold dear to the confession of faith and the God to whom you confess.
Have you ever seen or heard of the whirling dervishes?
Yes.
Yeah, the turkey. Yeah.
Yes.
The whirling dervishes are interesting. When they twirl like they do, they have one hand up to receive from God and the other hand turned over to let go of the things that they shouldn't have and receive what God wants them to have.
I did not know that. That's new to me.
Yeah. So they have one hand up and one hand down as they spin, and that's
just a library of information.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, man, you're welcome to check out a book anytime you want. It's a free library.
That's
so
good,
I want you to explain this to me. What is the difference in the law of the harvest and the law of Pinocchio?
So the law of Pinocchio is all about consequences, right? And so one of the things I said today in the message is that finances don't work in the law of Pinocchio. The law of Pinocchio is if you mess up, there's a consequence.
Yeah.
So Pinocchio would lie and his nose would grow. Well, when you tell the first lie, it's not a big deal. You got a little bit bigger nose than everybody. But when you have a nose so big that no one can get close to you,
right?
No one can come into your presence. You can't walk around. You get to find out the consequences. And the reality is finances don't work that way. And so when we mess up, when we do too much money grabbing, too much hoarding, too much whatever, and there's no consequences, then we just kind of keep on going on. And what happens is we set in pattern a habit that we reap later on. So the law of the harvest is what you sow, you reap, right?
Right.
And so basically it works like this. I might decide right now I'm going to run this credit card up to its max. And I might be doing good right now because I got my stuff. All the stuff I wanted, I got. But, eventually the 21% kicks in, and the 25% kicks in when you don't pay the bill first on time. And eventually I told the story of my own journey. At 18, I got a K's Jewelers credit card. And I was dating this girl and I was showing her a good time,
Yep.
literally, right? With all kinds of rings and whatever. And when Rose and I, and this is totally ironic, Rose and I are married and we go to buy our first house and guess what's on my credit report? That K's Jeweler credit card. And so this idea of the law of Pinocchio is immediate consequences.
Yeah.
The law of a harvest is later on consequences. But here's the difference between Pinocchio and harvest. Pinocchio, consequences right away, probably limited, right? You can see the consequences. The harvest, which you reap in abundance.
Yep.
And so it goes with our finances. We got to remember to constantly. I talked about these three things, and we got to give this context. I talked about these three areas that we needed to pay attention to, right? So we need to ask this question about a reference point. When we're trying to balance, there's a reference point. We're keeping our eyes on our reference point. And then
right.
I talked about this area of constant correction.
Yep.
Constantly looking at our finances, spying on our finances, making corrections. And the last one is a clear objective. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What's the roadmap? And so when we talk about those, when we talk about the law of Pinocchio versus the law of harvest, we need to have those in context.
Yeah, you actually, something you said, which was really true, and I feel like you hammered it home this way. And honestly, the law of the harvest baffles people because when they don't have immediate consequences, it's like you said, they just kick the can down the road, which is how USA has run its economic structure for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
And eventually the piper will be paid. You know?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, but what you said was if every time
for a second, Kelly.
Yeah.
The piper will be paid.
Yeah.
And when the piper gets paid, and when grown men begin to pay the piper,
yeah,
it's going to be in bloodshed.
It is because there's not going to be enough money to pay it. And
yes.
So the chaos that was sown 25 years ago will be paid in blood. You're right.
Yeah.
What you said was, and I loved it. And again, I think everybody wishes it were this way, but we say that until it happens. But you said if every time you looked at something you shouldn't, your eyes grew, mm-hmm. right? Or every time you listened to something, your ears grew, and every time you said something, your mouth grew or your tongue grew or whatever. You know, you would stop at some point and say, "What am I doing?" You know, like I need to quit doing this. Because that's not the way that, and I feel like we can say sin, because that's not the way sin typically manifests itself. Mm-hmm. We don't understand it. But the one thing that we do have is the ability to look in our past and look in our family's past and see when their sin matured, right? But most people just don't do that. They don't look at the other fields, you know. They just see this blank slate in front of them, like, whatever. And
I talked about that adult in my life.
Yeah.
That in my life who hadn't saved, who hadn't invested, who hadn't done anything. And now that adult family member is struggling.
Right.
And is needing to be dependent on someone to get by and feels like they're always, you know, stressful and always depressed and always, because we have seen, because that person did not do the hard work here, now they're reaping the consequences. I hate to use the word abundance. I don't like the word abundance, but they're reaping double fold, triple fold with the consequences of what they did not do back here. And I always say that to people, you know, we can always say, God is a God of grace. This is the greatest thing in the world. And as my friend would always say, God will help you pull the nails out, but the holes are still there.
That's right.
Like sin has consequences, right?
Yeah.
And then we love to talk about the God of grace who will forgive us. And of course he will forgive us. But then we have to begin to live with the consequences. So I always say to people, I would say this to students all the time, don't go down and live in the pig pen, because you can come home again.
Right.
But the pig pen had consequences.
That's true. And you'll always be scarred by it. I mean, it's not like you can walk around and people didn't know you were there. All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap up this segment here because I want you to talk about some tough stuff on the next one. So, but I appreciate what you said, and I just want to reiterate the 3 points. And this is, you said it's going to come up again: reference point, constant correction, and clear objective. Right. So we'll talk about that again here in a minute. But that was the three ways to have balance
Yep.
right?
The
And it
laws,
applies
three
to
laws
many
of
things,
balance.
but at this point, we're talking about finances. So thank you, James, everybody. Thanks for watching.
See you
Check us
later.
out Wednesday at 2
See you
o'clock. Don't
Wednesday.
forget Tuesday at 2 o'clock. We'll try to blow your mind. So check that out too. And glad you came and saw us.
Bye.